The Galactic Empire, a vast and powerful force controlling countless star systems, had always ruled with absolute authority. For centuries, they had fought wars, crushed rebellions, and maintained an iron grip over the galaxy. The idea of any species challenging their power seemed laughable to the high officials of the Empire. However, whispers of something strange and terrifying had begun to spread in the far corners of the galaxy. Reports started coming in from the frontier worlds, where pirates and rogue factions had always caused trouble. These reports spoke of a mysterious species, humans, who were rumored to be systematically destroying pirate fleets. At first, the Empire dismissed the stories. After all, how could a species of unknown origin, from a distant part of the galaxy, pose any real threat? Then Lieutenant Calveric, an ambitious officer in the Imperial Navy, was tasked with investigating the situation. He was known for his sharp mind and quick thinking, traits that made him stand out among his peers. With his reputation on the line, Cale was determined to find out if these rumors were true. His fleet, a formidable group of ships, set off toward the outer rim of the galaxy, where the mysterious attacks were said to occur. The journey was long, and the farther they traveled from the Empire's core, the more dangerous the unknown became. Cale had heard the stories. Pirates who had once been the terror of the galaxy were now being destroyed without a single shot fired. Entire fleets had vanished, leaving only debris behind. Some said it was a trap, others claimed it was the work of a new weapon, but no one could explain who or what was responsible. As they neared the reported location, Cal's crew began to feel a strange unease. The darkness of space stretched endlessly before them, and there was a quiet tension in the air. Suddenly, a signal came through the fleet's communication system. It was a message, unusual and direct, coming from a small, unarmed ship. It was human. Warning, the message said, retreat or face the consequences. Cal's crew was confused. The message was brief and cold, almost as if the humans were bored by the threat they posed. Cal ordered the fleet to power up their weapons, preparing for what he believed would be a small skirmish. But as they approached the coordinates, something unexpected happened. On their scanners, Cal saw the image of a single human ship floating peacefully in space. It was unarmed, no weapons visible, no shields up. It looked like a regular transport ship, but there was an unsettling calm about it. And then, without warning, Cal's fleet was under attack. The human ship didn't fire any traditional weapons. Instead, it unleashed a series of EMP pulses that disabled the Imperial fleet's communications and targeting systems in a split second. Cal watched in disbelief as his crew scrambled to regain control of their ships. But it was too late. The human ship's next move was even more astonishing. It sent out a signal, a wave of data that infiltrated the Imperial fleet systems. Ships that had once been the pride of the Empire, ships designed to withstand the most advanced weaponry, suddenly froze in place. The lights flickered. The engines sputtered to a halt. Cal's once proud fleet was now completely powerless. He could only watch as the human ship maneuvered through the immobilized vessels, scanning them with technology that seemed far beyond anything the Empire had. And then, without a single shot fired, the pirate fleet that had been their target was no more. All of its ships had been deactivated and captured. It was at that moment that Cal understood the gravity of the situation. The humans weren't just fighting battles. They were ending them. They weren't interested in conquest or destruction. They simply neutralized threats in the most efficient way possible. As the human ship made contact again, Cal received a final message. "Leave now," it said. "If you continue to pursue us, you won't be the last to fall." For the first time in his life, Cal felt fear. Fear of something he couldn't understand. Fear of a species that didn't fight wars like the Empire did, but ended them. Lieutenant Calveric returned to the Empire's capital with his fleet, but the images of that strange encounter with the human ship stayed with him. His mind couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The way the humans had neutralized the pirate fleet without even firing a single shot, It was not only impressive, it was terrifying. Kale was used to fighting wars the Imperial way. Brute force, advanced weapons, and overwhelming power. But what he had witnessed was something else entirely. The Empire's leadership was dismissive at first. They didn't believe that the humans posed any real threat. To them, the human ship was just a small, unusual anomaly. It wasn't until Cal began to study the reports more carefully that he realized the extent of the problem. He saw that human ships were not only capable of disabling enemy fleets without violence, they were also able to dismantle entire war machines. It wasn't just about the firepower. The humans used something far more dangerous: intelligence. They seemed to know how to predict the next move of their enemies, always staying one step ahead. It wasn't magic, Cal thought. It was something far more advanced than anything the Empire had ever encountered. Cal asked for permission to investigate further. The Empire agreed, though they still saw it as nothing more than a minor distraction. He was sent to the outskirts of the galaxy, to a system that had recently been pacified by humans. What he found shocked him. The planet, once a center for trade and warships, had been turned into a peaceful, thriving world. The Imperial officials stationed there had been replaced, not by soldiers, but by human diplomats. The military had been disbanded, and in its place, the humans had introduced a system of governance based on cooperation and mutual respect. There were no signs of resistance, no signs of rebellion. It was as though the human presence had quietly, but firmly, changed everything. Cal spent weeks speaking with the humans who had arrived on the planet. He learned that they didn't see war as an answer to anything. They didn't fight for power, control, or land. They fought to end conflicts and bring peace where it was needed most, and they did it without the violence the Empire relied on. The humans used technology to disable weapons, disarm armies, and even disrupt entire governments. They didn't fight wars, they ended them. As Cal spoke with more of the humans, he began to understand something even more shocking. The humans didn't just use advanced technology. They used something more profound: empathy. They understood the minds of their enemies, knew how to communicate with them, how to show them that war wasn't the answer. And yet their methods were terrifying to the Empire. Cal learned that when humans fought, they didn't just destroy, they rebuilt. They didn't leave ruins in their wake. They left systems that were stronger than before. Every planet they visited seemed to improve, becoming more peaceful and self-sustaining, without the need for an occupying force. It was as if the humans didn't just conquer, they healed. Cal felt conflicted. He had always been taught that the Empire was the greatest power in the galaxy. But here were these humans, who didn't need to destroy to win. They didn't need the Empire's weapons or armies. They had something else, something Cal couldn't even begin to understand. One evening, as Cal sat with a human leader named Alexei, the conversation took a turn. Alexei spoke in calm, measured tones, but his words felt like a challenge. "Why do you fight?" he asked Cal. "Why do you destroy what you don't understand? Why do you force your will upon others when you have the power to help?" Cal didn't have an answer. He had always believed that war was the natural state of the galaxy, that the strong would always dominate the weak. But what if the humans were right? What if war didn't have to be fought the way the Empire had always fought it? What if there was another way? As the days passed, Cal saw more and more proof that humanity was not interested in conquest. They were interested in ending suffering, stopping violence, and showing the galaxy a different path. He began to wonder if the Empire's view of the galaxy was wrong. And then a report came in from one of the outer systems. The Empire's ships had encountered another human fleet. This time, they didn't retreat. Instead, they offered the Empire one last chance to negotiate. The message came through clearly, without any threats or demands. It was simple and direct. "End the cycle of violence, or we will end it for you." Cal couldn't help but feel the weight of those words. The humans weren't coming to conquer. They were coming to stop the war, and in doing so, they had the power to end the Empire itself. Back in the heart of the Galactic Empire, fear began to spread. It was a quiet, creeping fear that no one could ignore. The high-ranking officials who had once dismissed the humans as a minor threat were now starting to realize how wrong they had been. The Empire's dominance over the galaxy was no longer as secure as it had once seemed. The whispers of human influence were growing louder with each passing day. Stories of planets that had been taken over by humans without a single battle being fought. Worlds that had once been under the control of the Empire now thrived under a new system, one where peace, not power, ruled. And that was the most frightening thing of all. Lieutenant Cal Varric, who had once been a loyal servant of the Empire, now found himself caught between two worlds. He had witnessed the humans' methods firsthand, and he had seen the results. They didn't conquer, they transformed. And what was even more troubling was the way they did it. The humans didn't just offer solutions to problems. They exposed the flaws in the Empire's own systems. They didn't fight to destroy. They fought to expose the corruption that had taken root within the Empire itself. The High Council of the Empire, once confident and unshakable, now found themselves on the defensive. They sent more fleets to deal with the human presence in the outer systems, but each fleet was met with the same result: defeat without a single shot being fired. The humans had not only mastered technology far beyond what the Empire had, they had also learned how to use psychological warfare to their advantage. It wasn't just about disabling ships or disabling weapon systems. The humans knew how to break the spirit of the soldiers, how to turn them from enemies into allies. Their ships would broadcast peaceful messages, sometimes even calling the soldiers by name, showing them that they didn't need to fight. In moments of weakness, the human fleet would offer a choice: surrender or continue fighting. The soldiers of the Empire, tired of endless wars and ever-growing destruction, began to wonder if there was a better way. As Cal witnessed this firsthand, he couldn't ignore the changes happening around him. It was like a slow unraveling of everything he had believed in. Everywhere he looked, the Empire was beginning to crack. Rebel factions that had once been crushed under the boot of the Empire were now working with humans to find peaceful solutions. Former Imperial officers, now disillusioned, started defecting, seeking refuge in the human-led systems. It was becoming clear. The Empire was losing control. In the Imperial capital, whispers turned into panic. The Emperor himself issued a decree. Humanity was to be wiped out at all costs. He was furious that anyone dared challenge the Empire's rule, and he refused to allow such a threat to remain. The Emperor's generals rallied their fleets, preparing for a full-scale assault on the human colonies. But deep down, Cal knew this wouldn't be an easy victory. The humans didn't fight wars the way the Empire did, and that made them dangerous. One evening, while Cal sat in his quarters, he received an unexpected transmission. It was from the human leader, Alexei, the same diplomat who had spoken with him on the peaceful planet. The message was simple, but its impact was profound. "We don't want to fight, Cal," Alexei said. "But if you keep pushing, we will have no choice but to end this war forever. We don't want to destroy the Empire. We want to rebuild it. You just have to see that there is another way." Cal's heart raced as he listened. He had spent his life fighting for the Empire, believing that peace could only be maintained through strength. But what if the humans were right? What if peace could be achieved without war? The thought made him uneasy, but deep down, he knew that humanity had something the Empire didn't, something that could change the entire galaxy. The Emperor's next move was swift and brutal. He launched a massive attack on one of the human-controlled systems, determined to end the human threat once and for all. The battle was fierce, but the humans didn't fight back the way the Empire expected. Instead of engaging in full-scale warfare, the humans used their technology to disable entire fleets, neutralizing weapon systems, and turning Imperial ships against their own commanders. It became clear that the Empire's traditional methods of fighting were no match for the humans' approach. The more the Empire tried to fight, the more it lost. And the more it lost, the more the galaxy began to take notice. As Kel watched from the sidelines, he realized that the fear spreading across the Empire wasn't just about the humans. It was about the Empire's inability to adapt, to evolve. The humans weren't interested in conquering the galaxy. They wanted to free it from the cycle of endless war and suffering. And with each passing day, the Empire's grip on the galaxy weakened. Kale knew the time had come for a choice: remain loyal to the Empire, or embrace the unknown future the humans were offering. And deep inside, he knew that humanity's peaceful revolution had already begun. The Emperor's patience had worn thin. After weeks of humiliation, failure, and constant fear of losing control, he ordered a full-scale attack on humanity. He believed that the Empire's power could not be questioned, and no matter how advanced the humans were, they would fall to sheer force. The Empire would crush them once and for all. Kale watched in disbelief as the massive Imperial fleet prepared for war. This time, there was no room for negotiation, no peaceful offers. The Emperor was determined to destroy the human presence in the galaxy. The fleet's weapons were charged and ready, the vast array of ships ready to launch an attack on the human-controlled systems. Kale knew the battle was inevitable, but part of him wished for a different outcome. He had spent weeks with the humans and seen firsthand how they didn't want war. They didn't fight for glory or territory. They fought to end violence, to stop the endless cycle of destruction. And yet, here they were being dragged into the same war the Empire had always fought. As the Imperial fleet approached, Cal's doubts grew. He knew that the humans had a different way of fighting, something the Empire couldn't understand. The humans didn't rely on overwhelming numbers or firepower. They relied on something more: strategy, technology, and an understanding of war as an art of precision, not brute force. The first attack came without warning. The Imperial fleet launched a barrage of missiles and energy beams, expecting to tear apart the human defenses. But as soon as the missiles reached their targets, they simply disappeared. The humans didn't use shields or weapons in the way the Empire did. Instead, they employed a system of advanced technology that neutralized attacks before they could cause harm. The missiles were harmlessly rerouted into deep space, their energy dissipated by an unseen force. Kale watched in horror as the battle unfolded before him. His fleet had fired its weapons, but none of them reached their targets. The human ships didn't fight back in the traditional sense. They didn't engage in direct combat. Instead, they used technology to disable the Imperial ships. Kale saw Imperial warships grinding to a halt, unable to move, their weapons disabled, their crew helpless. It was clear that the humans weren't just outmatching the Empire. They were outsmarting it. Every ship that tried to fire upon them was crippled without the humans even lifting a finger. The Imperial fleet, once thought to be unbeatable, was now completely immobilized. The humans had turned their own weapons against them. As the battle raged on, Kel received a message from one of the human leaders, Alexei. The message was simple, but its impact was immense. "This doesn't have to end in destruction, Kale." Alexei's voice echoed through Kel's communication system. "We don't want to fight. We want peace. If you continue, we will stop you. This will be the last war." The message struck Kel like a blow. He had always believed that peace was impossible without force, that the Empire's strength was the only way to maintain order. But the humans weren't using strength in the same way. They weren't conquering. They were dismantling the systems that caused conflict in the first place. They were ending the very idea of war. As the battle wore on, the Imperial fleet began to fall apart. The once proud ships were disabled one by one. The Empire's commanders tried to rally their forces, but it was clear they were losing. No amount of firepower could break the humans' defense, and no amount of will could turn the tide of battle. Kale felt something change inside him. He realized that the Empire wasn't just losing this war, they were losing the future. The galaxy was evolving, and the Empire had no place in that future. Humanity had come to stop the cycle of violence, not to become part of it. And the more Kale watched the destruction unfold, the more he understood. This wasn't just about military defeat. This was about something much larger. The Empire had built its power on fear, on strength, on control. But the humans had built their strength on something different: cooperation, intelligence, and a desire for peace. And now, the Empire was paying the price for ignoring that. The battle ended with the Imperial fleet in shambles, its commanders retreating or surrendering. The humans didn't destroy the ships, they simply rendered them useless. The Empire's greatest weapon was now a collection of broken vessels, useless to those who had once commanded them. In the aftermath of the battle, Kale stood on the bridge of his ship, watching as the human fleet moved in. The battle was over, but the war was far from finished. The Empire had fallen, but it wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something new. And Kale, once a loyal servant of the Empire, now found himself questioning everything he had ever believed. The future was no longer in the hands of the Empire. It was in the hands of humanity. The Empire had fallen. Its once mighty fleet, shattered and powerless, drifted aimlessly in the aftermath of the final battle. The galaxy that had lived under the Empire's rule for centuries now found itself at a crossroads. No one knew exactly what would come next, but the humans had made one thing clear: they would not leave until peace was achieved. Lieutenant Calaveric stood on the bridge of his ship, staring out at the vast emptiness of space. His world had changed completely. Once, he had believed in the power of the Empire, in the righteousness of its cause. But now, everything he had known seemed like a lie. He had watched as the humans, with their strange methods, had not only defeated the Empire's military might, but had offered something that Cal had never believed possible: a chance for peace. Cal had once believed that peace could only be won through strength and domination. That was how the Empire had operated, after all. But the humans had shown him a different way. They didn't fight to conquer. They fought to end conflict. They didn't rely on fear or brute force. They relied on intelligence, compassion, and a desire to create a better galaxy. The human leaders, like Alexei, had invited Kale to join them in their efforts to rebuild the galaxy. It was tempting. The humans had proven they could end wars without violence, and they had already begun helping the planets and species that had suffered under the Empire. But Kale was torn. He had been a soldier for so long, and it was hard to let go of everything he had been trained to believe. Still, as he watched the human ships in the distance, Kale knew deep down that the future was with them. The Empire was gone, and no matter how hard the old leaders tried to hold onto their power, the galaxy was changing. There was no place for the Empire's ways anymore. The humans had shown that. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, other former Imperial officers and soldiers had begun to make their own decisions. Some had defected, joining the human-led efforts to bring peace to the galaxy. Others, like Kale, were unsure. The old ways were hard to forget, but the new path was calling. The humans didn't take control by force. They didn't occupy planets or install puppet governments. Instead, they worked alongside the inhabitants of each world, helping them build new systems of cooperation. Where the Empire had ruled with fear, the humans ruled with trust. They offered technology to help planets rebuild, but they never forced their hand. It was always a choice. And slowly, the galaxy began to change. The news spread quickly. Planets that had once been under Imperial rule were now embracing the idea of a new kind of galaxy, one where power was not the goal, but peace. Species that had long been in conflict with each other were finding ways to work together, guided by the human example. Even the pirates, once the enemies of the galaxy, were being rehabilitated and offered new lives. Humanity had done what the Empire had never believed possible. They had broken the cycle of violence that had plagued the galaxy for so long. One day, Kale received a message from Alexei. It was brief but powerful. "Join us, Kale. Together, we can build a future where no one has to fight to survive." Kale thought about it long and hard. The galaxy was healing, slowly but surely, but it would take time. It would take all of them working together. The humans had already shown their ability to lead with compassion, and Kale knew now that he couldn't turn his back on that. He had seen the future, and it wasn't in the Empire's weapons or its control. It was in the hope and peace that humanity was bringing to the galaxy. With a deep breath, Kale made his decision. He sent a message to Alexei, saying simply, "I'm with you." The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, Kale felt hope. He no longer fought for the Empire's ideals. He fought for something better, something that had always seemed impossible, but now felt within reach. A galaxy united in peace, where humanity's strength wasn't in its ability to destroy, but in its ability to heal. As the humans continued to spread their message, Kale stood beside them, knowing that together they could build a new galaxy, one where wars were a thing of the past, and the future was bright.